What's up, everybody? Nico Dwyer back for the 10th inning, giving you another edition of This Day in Sports History. In yesterday's edition, we saw Willie Mays getting his first home run off of future Hall of Famer Warren Spahn. We don't have anything involving the greatest baseball player to ever live, my opinion, in this video today. However, there are many more interesting things to get into. If you all enjoy this video, leave a like on it. If you're new to the channel and you want to see more of this content, hit that subscribe button. And without further ado, let's get into it. This Day in Sports History. Today we start out in 1940, and one of the greatest swimmers of all time, Adolf Kiefer, swims the world record 100 yards backstroke. The first man to ever swim it in under a minute at 57.9 seconds. He would eventually also own the world record for the 100-meter backstroke, but he wasn't able to get that under a minute. He still was able to get the 100-yard under a minute. Now we move up to 1948, and we have another edition of the French Championships. On the men's side, Frank Parker wins the first of two straight French titles, beating Yaroslav Drobny 6-4, 7-5, 5-7, 8-6 in 4 sets. This would be Parker's third major single title. On the women's side of the French, we have Nellie Landry defeating Shirley Fry 6-2, 0-6, 6-0 in 3 sets. This would be Fry's only major of her career on the singles side. Sticking with the French Championship, we move up to 1954. On the men's side, Tony Trabert defeated Art Larson 6-4, 7-5, 6-1 in straight sets for the first of 2 straight French title wins. This would be the second major out of 5 overall majors Trabert would win in his career on the singles side. On the women's side, Maureen Connolly, one of the greatest young tennis players of her time, maybe of all time, defeated Jeanette Bukali 6-4, 6-1 in straight sets. This would be the 6th of her 9 major single titles. And Connolly actually retired a year later at age 19. So she had 9 major titles by the time she retired at 19. That's why I said she was probably one of the greatest young tennis players of all time. Doesn't matter, men's or women's. She won her first major at the age 16 and was just dominant throughout the rest of that 3-year period. 9 major titles by the time of 19, but then she called it quits. Also in 1954, the first woman to break the 5-minute mile barrier was Diane Leather when she ran the mile in 4 minutes, 59.6 seconds. This milestone was overlooked because this was about the same time Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute barrier for the men's side and overall. So Leather really never got the recognition she deserved because it also wasn't looked at as a world record because they thought the mile was too long for women, which is just absurd. But either way, Leather became the first female to break the 5-minute barrier in the mile run. Going back to the French Championships, in 1965, Fred Stoll defeated Tony Roche 3-6, 6-0, 6-2, 6-3 in 4 sets for his first major title, the first of 2 major titles in the single game. On the women's side, Leslie Turner Bowrey defeated Margaret Smith 6-3, 6-4 in straight sets. This would also be her first major singles title of 2. Now we move to the European Cup final in 1968 that pitted Manchester United up against Benfica. Manchester United became the first English club to win the trophy. The score was tied 1-1 after the 90th minute, with Bobby Charlton scoring in the 53rd minute for Man U and Jaime Draca scoring in the 79th minute for Benfica. But then when extra time came, Manchester United just put a rout on. George Best scored in the 92nd minute, Brian Kidd scored in the 94th minute, and then Bobby Charlton scored again in the 99th minute, giving him his second goal of the day, all leading to Manchester United's first title for an English club in the European Cup final. Move up 3 years, go to the United States, and we have the Indianapolis 500 of 1971, where Al Unser won in 3 hours, 10 minutes, 11.545 seconds. This would be Unser's second consecutive victory and he has 4 titles. During 1977 at the Indianapolis 500, AJ Foyt wins for a record 4th time. There are 3 drivers all time with 4 wins, Foyt being one of them. While this was Foyt's 4th win in the Indy, it was also big because this would be the last time that a winner of the Indy 500's car was built entirely within the United States. At the same Indianapolis 500, Janet Guthrie became the first woman to drive in the race. She finished 29th, but she was able to drive. She was a pioneer for people such as Danica Patrick. During the 1980 NBA season, there were really 2 rookies that stood out above the rest. Larry Bird and Magic Johnson. Maybe you've heard of them. When voting for the Rookie of the Year, Larry Bird beat Johnson by a blowout 63 of 66 votes. This would go on to be one of the greatest rivalries of all time. It kind of already was. We saw them in their college days. Now we saw them in their pro days. Celtics versus Lakers. This time, the Celtics won. In 1983, a world record discus throw was set by Yuri Dumchev of USSR. He threw the discus 71.86 meters, still good for second place all time in outdoor throws. It was beaten 3 years after, but after all this time, he still ranked second for the longest discus throw outside. In the same year in the United States at the Indianapolis 500, Tom Sneva wins in 3 hours, 5 minutes, 3.092 seconds. This would be his first Indy victory after coming in second 3 times prior. Then we have a bit of a feel-good story. In 1985, Steve Fournier completes Cross Canada Marathon at Victoria, British Columbia. This was started March 31st the previous year, took 14 months to complete. 4,925 miles, 7,924 kilometers later, he finished, and he raised $14 million in doing so. As the same day Fournier finished his marathon, the 29th edition of the European Cup was being held, and Juventus was going up against Liverpool. Juventus ended up defeating Liverpool 1-0. This was their first win in 3 attempts at the Cup, with Michel Platini scoring in the 58th minute on a penalty kick. It was controversial since Liverpool thought they fouled him outside of the box. The referee didn't see it that way, awarded him the penalty kick. That would be the only goal of the game-winning goal for Juventus on their way to their first European Cup. Then we move up to 1988, and the last time we've seen this in cricket. Graeme Hicks scores his 1000th run of the first-class cricket season. The last time we've seen this in the month of May. In Major League Baseball in 1990, we saw another record be broken on this day. Rickey Henderson stole his 893rd bag, breaking Ty Cobb's American League record, which stood for 62 years. Henderson hit a double and then stole third on a 2-0 pitch off of David Wells. What's so amazing about this feat, though, is it took Henderson less than 12 seasons to get there. It took Ty Cobb 24 seasons to do what he did. So in less than half the time, Henderson was able to beat what Ty Cobb would do. End up destroying the stolen base record of all time. No one is ever going to catch him because that's not how the game is played anymore. A year later in 1991 at the 35th edition of the European Cup, the Red Star Belgrade defeated Marseille 5-3 on penalty kicks. It was tied 0-0 at the end of extra time, so they went into PKs. Marseille missed the first penalty kick. Red Star ended up making all of their shots. It didn't even matter if Marseille made their 5th kick. They weren't going to win either way. So Red Star, after making all of their penalties, ended up winning the 35th European Cup. 2 years later, the 1993 NHL Clarence Campbell Conference Final, the Los Angeles Kings ended up defeating the Toronto Maple Leafs 4-3. In Game 7, the Kings ended up taking a 5-4 victory after taking an early 2-0 lead after the first. Then the Leafs scored 2 within the first 8 minutes of the second period to tie it up. Before the second was over, though, Wayne Gretzky added a goal for a 3-2 lead. Then in the third period, 1 minute into it, the Maple Leafs tied it back up, but then the Kings added 2 more goals, including a third goal from Gretzky, giving them a 5-4 victory, moving the Kings to the Stanley Cup. A year later at the Indianapolis 500, Al Unser Jr. wins in 3 hours, 6 minutes, 29.006 seconds for his second 500 victory. Then we move back to hockey. In 1996 at the NHL Western Conference Final, the Avalanche defeated the Red Wings 4-2. The Avalanche were up 3-1 when the Red Wings forced Game 6. The score was tied 1-1 after one period. Then Colorado scored 3 goals in the second, with Joe Sakic scoring 2 of them, giving the Avalanche all they needed, moving them on to the finals. At the 2005 edition of the Indianapolis 500, Don Weldon won in 3 hours, 10 minutes, 21.0769 seconds. This would be the first of 2 victories for Weldon at the 500. 5 years after that, in 2010, Roy Halladay, the Philadelphia Phillies pitcher, became the 20th pitcher to throw a perfect game in the MLB, the second in Phillies history. They ended up getting the victory 1-0 versus the Florida Marlins. Halladay struck out 11 batters on 115 pitches. We also had the Super Rugby final going on. The Pretoria Bulls retained their title over the Cape Town Stormers 25-17. Mornay Stein kicked 6 penalties and the conversion for the Bulls in their game, helping to give them their 25-17 victory. Then we move a year later in 2011 at the Indianapolis 500. Don Weldon wins in 2 hours, 56 minutes, 11.7267 seconds for his second 500 victory. We also had the Senior PGA Championship taking place, and Tom Watson wins his 6th and final Champions Tour major title. Then we move up to 2014 at the NHL Eastern Conference Final. The New York Rangers defeated the Montreal Canadiens 4-2. The Rangers ended up winning the first 2 games. Then the Canadiens came back, took Game 3 in overtime. The Rangers won Game 4, lost Game 5. Going to Game 6, the Rangers ended up winning 1-0. Dominic Moore scored 18 minutes into the second period for the game-winning goal for the Rangers as they moved on to the Stanley Cup Final. A year later, we're right back at the NHL Eastern Conference Final as the Tampa Bay Lightning defeated the New York Rangers 4-3. The Rangers won Game 1, the Lightning won Games 2 and 3. The Rangers won Game 4, Lightning Game 5, Rangers Game 6, all down to a Game 7. And the Tampa Bay Lightning ended up defeating the Rangers 2-0. They scored 2 minutes into the third period, and then they scored with 9 minutes remaining in the game. For the Lightning, Ben Bishop was in goal. He didn't allow a goal all day, got the shutout for the Lightning as they advanced to the final. Finally, in 2016 at the IPL Cricket Final, the Sunrisers Hyderabad defeated the Royal Challengers Bangalore by 8 runs. So there you have it. That's what happened this day in sports history. For Nick O'Dwyer and the 10th inning, stay safe, everyone. See ya.